For joining us. Today we'll be running through the abstract security platform. Once again, please feel free to put any questions in the chat section during the webinar, as we'll answer these towards the end of the presentation. Just a quick intro into who we are. Trinexia is a pan-EMEA value-added distributor and a leading provider in the most trusted solutions within the cybersecurity landscape. Our coverage regions are GCC, Africa, and Europe. Today, we're excited to collaborate with one of our strategic vendors, Abstract Security, for this virtual workshop. Abstract Security collects and routes data from cloud sources such as AWS CloudTrail, Azure Activity Logs, and GCP Audit Logs, removes unwanted noise, performs optimization, threat enrichment, and normalizes data for OCFS schema in real time before routing it to any SIEM or data lake of your choice. On the call with us today, we have Richard Betts. He's the VP of International Sales at Abstract Security to walk us through the value proposition of the platform. Richard Betts is a seasoned business leader with extensive experience in building and managing international operations for leading technology firms. With a proven track record of driving growth and expanding market presence, he successfully led initiatives across diverse industries, including the financial sector. Now at Abstract Security, he focuses on driving strategic growth and partnerships across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. With that, I'd like to hand over to Richard. I see there is something in the chat already. Thanks for that, Ian. Yeah, I think Richard will be sharing his screen in a moment or two. So thanks, Rich, if you can take it over from here.
Fantastic. Thanks, Calvin. Thanks, Jay. Yeah, I just on Ian Keller said nothing's shown on his screen. I can see that the Trinexia presentation has been shared. So is everyone able to see? Let me share my slides and we can start from there and just check that everyone can see the slide set. Let me do this. Here we go. Okay.
Okay, it's up on my side. Can somebody in the audience just confirm you can see?
Okay. Yeah, I think Ian's just put his thumb up there. So
cool.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Rich. Over to you.
Yeah. Sorry, not quite ready yet. What I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to turn my camera off just from bandwidth options, and I'll come back on screen when we complete the presentation. So let me just turn that off if everyone's okay. Just for the session today, I think what we'll do, I'll walk through the slides, and at the end of the session, we've obviously built time for sort of questions. You feel free to fire any questions at the end of the presentation that you might want to ask, and I'll do my best to answer those for you. So to start, my name's and thanks for the introduction, Calvin. Yeah, my name's Richard Betts. Or Rich Betts as I go by. So I look after the international business for Abstract Security. I've been with the company for a little over a year, and I'm focused on the international markets, particularly Europe, Middle East, Africa. I'm very, very happy to be here with Trinexia today. I've worked with the company a number of times, and they're a trusted partner of ours across the EMEA region. So that's a little bit about me. Just on a background, I've been in cybersecurity for as long as I can remember. I started before cybersecurity really existed. It was with working for customers like Reuters and others when kind of started off as antivirus, and it was really more part of operations, and then security started breaking out. So I've been around for a long time, worked for many startups and security companies, and obviously bigger companies as well, like IBM and HP. So hopefully I can bring a little bit of my view to some of the challenges we see, particularly across the SIEM space. So without further ado, I'll move on. Just give me a second. Okay, so just a little bit about the founding team. I don't usually put this up, but I think it's sometimes it's important, particularly in regards to new startup companies, that people do want to understand the sort of pedigree behind the company. And right across the team, from Colby, Ryan, Chris, Aaron, and Stefan, all come with the unique backgrounds. From Colby DeRodef, who founded companies like Anomaly, was CTO at Mandiant, to Stefan Zia as part of the founding team at Sumo Logic and ArcSight. So there's a huge amount of experience, particularly from the SIM space, but also across the threat intelligence space as well. So with Chris Camacho led companies like Flashpoint for 7 years, growing those into significant businesses globally. So that's a little bit of the background of the company. I mean, the company is reasonably still new. I mean, we were founded in 2023 on Valentine's Day, actually. So we always called it a sweetheart of a deal, as a little pun on the on the founding. And the company has grown significantly over the last couple of years, and it's really exciting to be here, and really what we're doing and how we're really changing things up for the SIM market and the data lake market. So, oh, right, just to move on. So let me first of all, I really want to talk a little bit about the evolution of security logging. So, kind of where we are now, and most importantly, sort of where we're heading. As you all know, the era SIM has played really a vital role in how we manage and analyze security data. But it's really come to a time when many organizations are looking beyond the SIM and really looking into the future to understand what's next. And here at Abstract, we believe that future is with us. The point is, though, I think for any organization that are looking at the current SIM technologies and challenges around the SIM technologies, it's very much a journey rather than a destination right now. So many organizations are kind of looking at that Gartner Magic Quadrant, that top right-hand quadrant, and kind of looking at all those vendors in that quadrant, thinking they've all been kind of disrupted or acquisitions, etc. So what do we do next? How do we better work with our existing vendors? How do we better optimize what we're doing those vendors? And I want to cover some of that as we walk through the presentation today. So let's just take a moment to reflect on how security logging and monitoring has changed over the last couple of decades. So, back in 2002, as I said, I've been in security for a long time, so I'm sort of showing my age here. But back in 2002, network and system logging was really the focus, or capturing basic essentials, sort of simple logs from firewalls, maybe antivirus tools and system security devices. And then by 2005, really compliance became the driving force behind the industry. So really pushing organizations to adopt a much more comprehensive logging strategies. And just working in the UAE, I mean, I've spoken to many organizations where, maybe new banks, challenger banks, which are really being driven, almost the SIM strategies are being driven by compliance. So, but remember, the SIM is a security product ultimately. So, many organizations have really struggled with that process of being driven to store data from a compliance perspective, but reducing the security value that they may be getting from their technologies. And then if you kind of fast forward to 2010, suddenly the floodgates opened. Data from all areas, applications, networks, security devices, everything started flowing in. And by today, we're kind of swimming in data. It's not unusual to talk to a large bank that's managing petabytes of data in the SIM and data lake technologies. And the sort of reality is that vast volume of data, or that vast volume of security data generated today, has led to what we kind of call, and our CEO always refers to it as, this kind of data swamp. It's really become quite unmanageable, sort of inefficient, and mostly costly. I mean, we see some really mind-boggling numbers of costs for storage, particularly for larger organizations that may be moving many terabytes of data a day. So let's have a look a little bit about security operations, SecOps teams. I mean, SecOps teams are under constant pressure really to manage enormous volumes of telemetry data. Again, very costly and complex. And then different kind of data sources, these kind of different data sources make it harder to detect, analyze, and really respond quickly to threats. If you can imagine, with the advent of cloud, we now have multiple cloud providers. I mean, the obvious ones are AWS, Azure, GCP. But when we talk to security analysts, not all security analysts are cloud experts. So sometimes they're very worried about gaps in the analysis of cloud data. So how do I know my developers haven't spun up some new services? Am I getting the logs? Have I got visibility of those services? So those services are potentially exposing the company to a breach, for example. And you've probably seen many breaches start with cloud, maybe open S3 buckets, etc. So the other point is, though, with the amount of data increasing, that's also driving up storage costs for data. And some of that data is often not very critical or not useful even to compliance or security. So when we look at that, I sometimes will talk to organizations and I'll say, well, how much data are you managing today? And they'll say, I'm moving currently about 10 terabytes of data. And that is a significant amount of data to store. And we'll talk about optimization as we go through the presentation. But many organizations we speak to are looking for not only to reduce the kind of cost of storage by reducing data, but also getting control of that data. So as they're adding new acquisitions or new services, they want to make sure they're able to maintain the volume of data and have control of that. The other problem also is onboarding new integrations can be a real heavy lift. So if you're onboarding new cloud services, maybe you've decided to start using services in GCP or adding new AI services in cloud. I know many of the cloud providers now have access to GPUs, so you can start to onboard AI type services. But these integrations can be a real heavy lift, particularly within environments like cloud. The other point is when you add integrations, particularly if you're using a particular SIEM or data lake technology, it might further lock you into those particular vendors. So if you need to pivot at some point in the future to change technologies, you're suddenly looking that you've got hundreds of integrations locked into your current technology, and it makes it very difficult to migrate. That kind of rip and replace almost becomes impossible. And again, as we go through the presentation, we'll cover some areas where we help with that. The other point is, threats. I know this is kind of a cliche. We all know threats are multiplying all the time, and we know that cybersecurity is constantly evolving and constantly more complex. And we know that the bad guys are constantly pivoting and and changing their tactics, etc. But that also increases in the number of alerts you get, the type of queries you want to run. You've got external contexts like threat intelligence feeds, enrichments. These tend to be siloed into other technologies. So it's not unusual for you to be trying to correlate alerts across multiple different technologies. So really to stay ahead, SecOps teams need a more streamlined, more cost-effective approach. And the one that really, you'll hear me talk about this a few times, one that really normalizes data, sort of cuts through the complexity and really helps them focus on what truly matters to them, which is securing your organization. So just to, we're going to move on, and I'm really going to talk about how abstract can help with these problems. And just to really recap, not all data is security related. So trying to really understand how we get you focused on the security data and understand what information really needs to be leveraged very quickly to get ahead of threats, onboarding, different types of data feeds and the high cost of transitions, SecOps teams, really left with high volumes of alerts, query structures across multiple different login and potentially XDR systems. Maybe they're having to use KQL in Sentinel. It's very complex now. Threat intelligence enrichment. So we're going to cover a little bit about how we help solve some of those challenges. So when we look at Abstract, or what we do, we really are the only platform that merges observability pipelines. So that's your data observability, focus really on sort of AI-powered analytics for security threat data, and options to add tiered storage or to use your existing data lakes. And this gives you a complete SecOps approach that delivers better cloud visibility, better cost optimization, and also future-proof is flexibility for you to be able to choose what type of data lake solutions you're using, or maybe you're in the process or helping to help you pivot to different types of SIEM technologies. We talk a lot about cloud now, but it's not just cloud. Obviously, it's also covering on-premise capabilities as well. So, I'm sure you've got lots of firewalls that are located in offices in Europe here. Lots of people work from home, so it's more about VPN now. But effectively not just cloud, but also on-premise. But while we're talking about cloud, let's just start with enhanced cloud visibility. So, Abstract connects seamlessly to sources like AWS, Azure, and GCP. So we're able to really take all your login data from those environments, sort of out-the-box integrations, and route everything into your current SIEM or a centralized data lake. We would basically normalize all those logs. And when we normalize, what we're really doing is we're taking all those complex logs in all those different formats and normalizing that into a consistent small schema. And then once we normalize that data, we're also able to start enriching that information. So we can add information like geolocation, maybe IAM roles. We can take all different types of external context. So as those logs are passing in real time, we're able to enrich those. So, maybe you've got AWS account IDs, which don't mean very much to the security team, but we might want to enrich those with real usernames, for example. So you're more quickly able to get to understand who did this. And all this information is enriched before it reaches the SIEMs. And effectively, your security alerts are much more focused and actionable. Then we have cost reduction and optimization. So we help you really cut costs by filtering out unnecessary data before it hits those expensive storage platforms. So imagine you might want to take your firewall logs and you may want to aggregate those. We can potentially reduce firewall login by anywhere from 40 to 60%. So when you look at a 40 to 60% reduction over many gigabytes or terabytes of data a day, that really starts to add up very quickly into huge cost savings of moving that data into your existing technology. The other point as well, we can start to just worried. Sorry, I just think one of the slides hasn't moved. No, we're okay. So the other point is, that cost reduction. We also allow you to route logs dynamically to the right SIEM or cloud platform, ensuring you only pay for the data you actually need. Now, to give you a sort of example of that, we sometimes talk to customers that have multiple different SIEMs. So they may be using Microsoft Azure Sentinel. So they might want to look and say, hey, Sentinel's quite expensive when we're adding data from non-Microsoft Azure or non-Microsoft data into Sentinel. So what we can do, we could route data, for example, your Microsoft data, you may want to move to Sentinel, and non-Microsoft data, you might want to move into your current Splunk deployment. So you could effectively split that data at source, or what we call bifurcate that data, and actually intelligently route that data to the right place. So hold on 1 second. Sorry, I've got some problems with the slides here. Let me just fix this. Okay. Okay. So then there's improved data and log data management and log routing. So using this sort of context-aware routing, abstract splits your data into different destinations. So on-premise systems, cloud platforms, specific tools based on security and compliance needs. So because we support multiple SIEMs and cloud platforms out the box or monitoring tools, you avoid kind of data silos. So you're able to split the data to make the most of your existing infrastructure. And then finally, sort of future-proofing your SIM strategy is key. And I mentioned this at the beginning of the presentation. So there's many organizations now, and I speak to many across the Middle East, in the Kingdom, in the UAE, and Bahrain, and others, where they're kind of looking at the current technology stack and thinking, okay, we know there's a lot of innovation coming over the next few years. We're not ready to move off those technologies that are working well, but we want to have a plan that allows us to really decouple, keep the technology, but decouple from them. And that means really decoupling the data. So removing that vendor lock-in and allowing yourself to become much more vendor agnostic or a vendor agnostic architecture. So we really keep your data sources separate from any single SIM or data lake. So where you do need to migrate or you do want to add new technology, maybe you do add Microsoft Sentinel, or maybe you're even looking at Google Chronicle, or you maybe want to move from Splunk on-prem to Splunk Cloud, for example. Those migrations are much smoother because you've already decoupled the data. So you're able to run multiple destinations. It's much simpler. The integration costs go down because your integrations are done at one place. You're maintaining your operations. You even get the process to migrate over a longer period of time. So that kind of the old rip and replace terminology, it becomes much easier to do that if you're able to decouple that data. So really, together, all these components give you a streamlined, more cost-effective solution that will really strengthen your security operations. Okay. So just talking a little bit more in detail about the platform, we really break our platform into a number of components, and sort of the first component is pipelines, and pipelines is at the core of what we really do. At a basic level, it's taking your log data and really normalizing that data on ingest. So taking all that raw information from multiple sources and transforming it into a consistent, usable format. And this makes everything easier to work with. It makes it easier to enrich, and it makes it easier to route. So it's kind of creating this solid foundation for really solid analysis and security operations. So if you could imagine, if you wanted to reduce, I'll give you some examples actually. For example, if you were taking firewall data and you wanted to remove internal to internal logging, because that may not be useful to you from a security or compliance perspective, within our model, it's very easy to drop that data in a single consistent way across multiple different firewall sources, because effectively that data will be normalized. So you can just operate in kind of a drag and drop way. You don't really need to understand the complexity of the log that's coming from that source of data, because we're going to normalize that for you, so you can see that in a consistent format. Again, talking about cloud, and I'll cover this a few times because particularly in the UAE, cloud is very well received now. I know in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, GCP, AWS is building Azure. So many organizations are very concerned about cloud. They know cloud's coming. They know the migration to cloud's happening. But obviously, from a security perspective, you've got to be able to really address your cloud environment. So our pipelines really gathers data from major cloud platforms. So not only can we gather the data from places like AWS, Azure, GCP, But we can also help you understand what needs to be logged in cloud. So we can look at AWS and we can tell you what is currently switched on and what data needs to be collected or what login needs to be enabled. So it helps you reduce gaps within your cloud login strategies. Then obviously, again, we can route that data to the right place. So it might be, if it's AWS, we're going to route that to Sentinel for you, for example. If it's if it's other cloud data, it may need to go into Splunk, for example. So really, it gives you a full end-to-end view of what's happening and enables deeper analysis alongside also all your on-premise logins. So you might have on-premise servers, Windows servers, Linux servers. You may have desktop data, CrowdStrike endpoint data, for example. It doesn't really matter. All that data will come in. And once that data is normalized, we'll then start to enrich that with context or that external context, like that geolocation details. Geolocation really important for picking up things like impossible travel. So those types of threats that are important. IAM role info for mapping who's doing what where. And more importantly, like cyber threat intelligence. So if you're using data from vendors like Recorded Futures, Group IB, some of the more niche vendors like Flashpoint and Intel 471, you can use our platform to really enrich with cyber threat intelligence. So an example of that would be, let's say, one of your servers reached out to a C2, which is known to be related to a ransomware actor. That kind of enrichment would be, as that log data comes through, we would enrich and say, hey, we see that C2, and maybe Flashpoint understands that that's related to a ransomware actor, and we'd automatically enrich that. And then we can use that enrichment in your current SIEM. Or, for example, you could use our analytics to alert on that. And I'm going to come on to the analytics on a subsequent slide. But where you're using those kind of external enrichments are particularly useful in today's complex cloud environments. And again, any kind of external enrichments can be brought in. It can be vendor-based enrichments, or it could be your own enrichments. It could just be a CSV file that may want to add some information around your banking service, for example. And then again, back to reducing cost and optimizing resources. So cost-wise, our pipelines, lets you filter out low-value data, like, debugging logs. So 80% of GitHub data, for example, is completely useless to security and compliance. So why are you spending money storing that data? Why are you kind of bulking out your storage? It makes it more challenging to query. So also duplicate telemetry, for example. So I talked about aggregation of firewall logs, which can help you reduce data load very effectively. So really, you're not paying for unnecessary ingestion or storage, and it kind of leads to this more efficient routing and better use of your resources, better use of storage. And I'm working with one customer right now that's not, the licensing model is really based on access in Splunk, and we're really helping them to get control of their data, reduce the amount of data, so they can reduce the cost of that query-based license. So that really helps them. It helps them optimize Splunk. It helps them work better and smarter. And they can also use some of our analytics as well to help really get some value back to the security guys. Let's move to the next slide. Excellent. So again, this is just a kind of picture of our pipelining process. It's quite interesting, actually, because if you see on the left there, you've got these kind of thick lines, and on the right, you've got these thinner lines. And basically what that means is, I can't show you this live, unfortunately, but it kind of gives you a view of the sort of reduction of data. And you'll see actually from sources like VPC Flow. So we've got any technical guys in the call today. VPC flow data can be very that can be quite a large amount of volumetric data, and there's a lot of stuff we can do on operating on that data to reduce the cost. So, and also you can see in here as well with our pipelines, we can dynamically split data streams and send them where you need them. So you can see here we're pushing some data into Splunk. We're pushing some data into our analytics process, and we're also pushing some data into some kind of compliance data lake that you might have. So in fact, in that smart routing process, we could even start to break out security data and compliance data. Compliance data typically needs to be there for an audit process, or if you've had an incident. And security data, you really need that real-time view. So you might want to push all that security data straight to Splunk, but keep your compliance data in immediate cold storage. It means reducing costs. So whether it's sort of on-premise system, clouds, platforms, you get this holistic visibility, and again, the data lands in the right place at the right time. And again, future-proofing your SIEM strategy. So finally, sort of these pipelines, the pipelines process is vendor agnostic. So all these integrations come out the box. You switch on Splunk, you switch on Exabeam, whatever it is as your destination, and then you switch on your sources of data. But remember, what happens now is this data is completely uncoupled in this normalization process. So if you add an additional SIEM technology later on, it's just as easy as dragging and dropping a line to be able to connect that source of data to its new destination. And then anywhere within this routing of data, you're able to operate on this data in real time. So and we provide recommendations about data you can drop. We provide these blocks that you can easily add in. We'll say, hey, if you've got AWS Guard Duty or you've got GitHub, these are the type of things you can safely drop, and it's not going to reduce your security value. So that's really the power of pipelines. It's kind of a streamlined way to really normalize your data, enrich the data, and route that data for maximum visibility and long-term flexibility. So kind of with this vendor sort of agnostic data architecture, there's no lock-in. This means you can seamlessly replace ad SIEM platforms without undergoing major re-architecting of your infrastructure. And sort of we all know how integrating sources sort of into a login process can be sort of time, can take time, and it's also costly. But if you start to normalize data, it really makes it much easier again to operate and just to have this one-click approach to be able to route data. One of the things, though, to remember is although we're normalizing all that data when it comes in, we're able to operate on that data. We can also reformat that data as it leaves our platform. So, for example, we can just move the data to Splunk using JSON. We can reformat data into the KIM format, that SIEM. Or maybe you're adding in a new AWS data lake and you want to output that data in OCSF, for example. So it's almost like any format of data in and kind of any format of data out. So I've covered about the migrations to SIEM, reducing costs and operational disruptions, and just to point out that we support hundreds of integrations right out the box. From major cloud providers to SIEMs, threat intelligence feeds, XDRs, data lake, and more. It's really let us do the hard work for you of managing the configurations of all those integrations. Work within a kind of drag and drop, very easy to use UI, and get your security guys really and your logging guys back to doing what they should do, which is focusing on protecting the organization from threats. Okay, so let's just take a little look at analytics. So this is the second component I wanted to cover today. So I won't spend too much time on here. I know we're running a little bit on the time. So really, all the data that comes in to Abstract is in real time. So we stream. So we're a streaming platform. So all the data coming into pipelines is streamed. We're doing all that normalization and enrichment and routing in real time. This is not something that you run, that you're putting into storage and you query later. So And really, our analytics process, we run on top of that stream of data. And our analytics is really changing the game, really, in security operations by letting you create powerful detections with no complex query languages. So imagine KQL and others. These languages are difficult to learn, and there's a few guys that become specialists in those languages. But because we normalize, uh, again, we can operate on all the data from all the sources in a consistent way. So imagine building that robust sort of analytical rules without having to learn those complex languages. So you can make your teams much more effective. Maybe more junior security analysts are able to really understand these kind of detection rules that they can apply, and that's really important because when you look at these detection rules, it's really important they fire. And to get a detection rule to fire, first of all, you've got to have the right data coming in, but also those rules have got to be configured correctly to allow them to fire in the event of a problem. The other point is everything's mapped to MITRE ATT&CK. So will give you those kind of deeper insights into what's happening in your environment. Maybe this particular activity is precursor. So maybe you're doing some aggregation on brute force activity. So maybe you're just looking for, someone's tried to log on 4 times in a short period of time, followed by a successful log on, which could indicate that you've got some brute force activity going on. Creating those type of detection rules within abstract is very simple, very easy to put those in place. And it may not be a critical alert, but it might be something you want your level 1 or level 2 guys just to look at, just to make sure there's not a sign that you've got these kind of precursors happening. And if that starts to escalate, maybe there's a lot of these events happening, that might be something that will roll up to level 2 or level 3, for example. And that example of our analytical process sort of it's an example of enabling those kind of seamless correlations events across diverse data sources. So I've worked with a customer that not only wanted to do that brute force, but they wanted to say, okay, I want to look at my admin users logging in, but I also want to look at my Okta data to understand if they've logged on without using multi-factor MFA, their multi-factor authentication. That's critical to them. So if that did happen, they want that as a critical alert. And again, building those detection rules within our platform is very easy. And look, on top of that, we have an out of the box, and we call this Astro, which is our threat team within Abstract, run by Aaron. And Aaron's team build these analytics and these advanced threat detections built into the platform. So when you add a new source, let's say you added Okta as a source, not only we're giving you all the recommendations on how you reduce the data flow, but we also give you out of the box detection rules that come with that integration. So you can effectively just switch those on within the platform. We give you a dashboard that shows you what's enabled and what we recommend is enabled based on the data sources we're seeing. So that's really quite powerful. We also support Sigma. So effectively, if you've got existing Sigma rules, are very easy to import into the platform. So altogether, this makes it much easier for security teams to work faster, smarter, and hopefully to keep you ahead of these, the threats that, constantly keep evolving. Okay. So looking just onto the the integration. So we provide our sort of robust out-of-the-box integrations for log sources. So, it's a library of pre-built connectors, for popular platforms and services. And you can rapidly ingest data from on-premise, cloud, security tools. There's no real laborious setups for that. There will be some kind of things you need to do on the log source end, but we provide full documentation. So effectively, typically when we do a POC, we'll spin the platform up, takes a couple of hours, and then generally, we'll get the first few sources set up in less than an hour, and you've got data coming in, you can start to work on that data. And that streamlined approach ensures really you're up and running quickly, you remove the headache of complex configurations, and it really enables you to focus on the insights rather than integrations. So again, and then coming back, we also are able, and we mentioned this a few times through the presentation, but we've got access to literally millions and millions of IOCs. So you can automatically correlate events to known adversarial infrastructure in real time. So that level of visibility means that the moment a malicious activity appears in your logs, it's we already have the enrichment from the threat intel providers, so it's flagged and contextualized using that verified intel data. So really by leveraging cutting edge CTI enrichments, and there's a broad range of trusted vendors that we work with today. So we can take threat intel feeds from pretty much all the CTI vendors. I know Group IB is very popular across the region. Group IB would be an example, and we can ensure that sort of adversary tactics, techniques, and procedures, are identified with precision. So talking about maybe precursors or stuff that's underway. And that really gives you this unparalleled depth to threat detection. And again, it really returns value to your security team, so they can really swiftly detect and neutralize threats, try to outpace the adversary's breakout time, etc. So that's a little bit really about these integrations with these, these commercial threat intel vendors. Also, maybe a government organization, you might produce your own threat intel. Remember, you can bring any enrichment into the platform. So you could bring your own enrichment. Maybe you're using platforms like OpenCTI or MISP or other type of threat intel platforms like ThreatQ, and you can bring that data into the platform from those products. Excellent. So now, particularly across the Middle East, we couldn't go through the presentation without talking about AI. So look, we do have AI within the platform. We're very focused on the fact that we want to use AI where it makes sense, where it helps us help you. So we're not just producing a chat box, right? We're leveraging AI within the technology. A lot of the stuff is under the hood that maybe you won't see, like helping with passing information, so passing logs into our schema, helping you really summarize threats. So you get thousands of alerts a day, helping you take all those alerts and really build insights. So who did this? Where did they do it? What did they do? How did they do it? So we'll give you all these presentations and dashboards and really helping you get to the root cause of what's actually going on and where it's coming from. So we're able to also summarize all the threats in all the insights into a natural language. So we'll give you a paragraph that says, this is what we're seeing, rather than schema of data or rather a complex report. We can even use ACE to help you build your queries. So if you want to look at the data as it's passing in real time, you can use ACE. You can just enter things like on the screen here, find authentication failures, and that will build the queries for you. And again, where maybe you've got teams that are less experienced, the AI becomes very powerful. And we'll continue to build our AI capabilities as AI develops, and from the generative models to AI agents, to localized LLMs, etc. And I know in the Middle East, AI is a very important topic right now, and particularly from a jurisdictional point of view. So just on the key takeaways, I'm coming to the end. So first one, streamline your data sources before you route to destination. So integrations, quick integrations, the ability to route quickly. Number two, removing noise. So we have the ability to really reduce the data. And we do see reductions of anywhere from 40 to 60% of customers, of helping them reduce the amount of data that's going off into storage, or helping them to be much more smarter about where they route that data to. So improve return on investment on your current login platform. So if you're using Splunk and you want to get a little bit of control on how much data you're sending there, Abstract really helps you with that. Dynamic routing, if you're adding new technologies, it's very easy to plug us in first. That migration is going to be significantly easier. Remove platform lock-in. If you add Abstract, you've got the ability to have thoughts about where you're going to go. Some people are looking at platforms like QRadar because of the transition to Paolo. that might be a very good time to start decoupling your data if you're looking at potential other solutions. Enrichment of data, so threat intelligence, great example of that. Building analytics to really help you increase security value, and also using AI to speed up your teams, and also the ability to really summarize insights, what's going on in my environments, and also use MITRE ATT&CK framework to really help you understand where you are. Is this a precursor activity? Is this breakout activity, for example? So that is now we obviously we can demo the platform very easy. So if anyone's interested to take a deeper look at the platform, you can talk to Trenexia, and we can obviously give you some insight. We can show you how the platform works and really give you a touch and feel of the technology. And also we can POC the technology. So if this is something you would really be interested in that looks valuable, we can look at POC and the technology. Very quick to set up. We usually recommend a couple of data sources, 2 or 3 data sources, so you can really start seeing immediate results, start operating on the data. And it's really easy to sort of add our analytics components in as well. So you can just drop the analytics on top of the data. So that's me. So I'm going to pause there, and then we can move on to some questions.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Richard. Yeah, we do have a couple of questions. Let me just open them here quickly. I'll start from the top. So
Sure.
Michelle's got a question here. You say your platform provides real-time insights about malicious activity after enrichment. Are those insights in the platform or in the SIEM? Can you provide an example?
Yeah, sure. So we can do 2 things. I mean, we can enrich the data, and that data enrichment can be sent to existing SIEMs, and then you can build queries in existing SIEMs, or you can use our analytics component. So you would build those detection rules, which would also look at that enrichment. So we would have out the box detection rules for detections from external threat intelligence, for example, which are critical to alert. So you have the ability to do both, Michelle. It's really up to you. It's very flexible.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Richard. Then we've got another one. Reducing data will help with reducing Splunk storage costs, but how do you help if I'm using an SVC compute model?
Yeah, so on the compute model, actually, we're working with a customer right now on that model. So there's a couple of things. The more data, the longer it takes to query, and the more costs there are. So I think in those types of model, I'm not a Splunk expert, and we need one of our technical guys here. But although the lighting models are different, they're kind of different color apples. So just because you can store as much as you want within those models, it will take longer and more resource to query because you've got a much bigger volume of data. So there are still significant value in managing the flow of data, those types of platforms.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Richard. Michelle, hope that answers your questions. Then we've got 2 here. How much security data can organizations realistically reduce before sending it to the SIEM or data lake without losing critical insights?
Yeah, it depends on the source. So sources, like I gave an example of GitHub, which from our internal teams, about 80% of that data is completely useless for security and compliance. Other data, it's really sometimes a little bit dependent on the eye of the beholder, effectively, of what's important to you as an organization. So obviously, if you look at things like firewalls, aggregating data is one area that you can really get some reduction, because if you've got the same source address and the same destination address, and that connection is done 100 times, you can take those 100 logs and reduce that to 1, and that can give you significant savings, but you're not removing any security value at all. But there are things you could drop. Maybe in those firewall logs, you might want to drop internal to internal traffic. So those events would be completely dropped and not sent, but you would have to make the decision. Again, when you add a source, we will add recommendations of what you can drop from safely that doesn't reduce any security value. But because you're working real time here, if you're dropping something that you subsequently say, actually, we need this data now, very easy to switch it on, and within real time, that data starts flowing again.
Cool. Thanks for that, Richard. So we've got another one. How does your solution compare to competitors like Cribble in terms of ease of use and management for the customers or for customers?
Yeah, there's various different kind of observability pipelines products in the market. I guess we very much focus on security. We are our pedigree is security. I would guess something like Cribble. Cribble's operating on raw logs, which means they typically are using kind of regexes to come into the raw logs and operate on them. So that means you really need to understand a lot about the raw logs coming in to really operate on them effectively. So you need quite skilled individuals to really understand how to build the relevant regexes to drop the data. The difference for us is because we're normalizing all that data, you only need to understand how to operate on that data within our schema. And that's very easy because you've only got one schema across all your log sources. So that's kind of really I would say, from my perspective, the biggest difference there will really be how you operate on the data. We make it incredibly easy to to operate, reduce, and enrich, etc.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, we've got one more question here. What are the key challenges organizations face when needing to route both raw and processed data simultaneously? How can you overcome these challenges?
Yeah, I think from just trying to under question, I think from a raw. Can you repeat the question, Calvin? Sorry, I just want to make sure I
What are the
understood
key
it correctly.
challenges organizations face when needing to route both raw and processed data simultaneously?
Yeah. Yeah, this comes up at financial services a lot. So some organizations are I don't know from particularly, it depends on the compliance requirements in each region. But I know in Europe, for certain verticals like banking, sometimes they'll say, "Hey, we need to keep a copy of the raw log," and we can't. So effectively, because we're normalizing data, we're taking that raw log into a normalized format. So effectively, but if you are required to keep that raw log, it's really easy to push those raw logs straight into some cold storage where it's cheap to keep those raw logs. So effectively, again, as the data comes in, we can bifurcate that data, take the raw logs, and then move those raw logs into low cost storage where they're available. So from a compliance perspective, you've still got access to those raw logs if you need them, but still being able to take advantage of all the normalization reductions, speed up security, in the more high cost storage where you would be working in real time or in hot storage in near real time. So yeah, we can support that model, and it's a common question that comes up from financial services customers.
Cool. Thanks, Richard. I think that's pretty much all we have time for. I see there's a couple of people jumping to their next meetings. So yeah, if there's anyone that has any other questions, if you'd like to see a demo, please reach out to us. I think my details will probably be the best to use. So just reach out to us. We will be happy to share some. Okay, there's another question here quickly right at the end. How does the platform reduce alert fatigue?
Yeah. So, hi, Michelle. Yeah, we basically, when we're using our analytics, obviously there will be thousands of events and thousands of alerts, and we do use some AI components. So we will typically break those alerts into findings and insights. So you'll get many, many findings, but we'll use our AI components really to bring all those findings together into an insight. So an insight could be a single an event or a single situation that's happening, but within that insight, may have many, many thousands of events. So we'll bring that together for you so you're better able to get to the root cause of actually what's happening. And remember that AI will also be looking at all those events and then giving you a paragraph of, hey, someone's turned off CloudTrail in AWS. That's a major problem. So you might have many, many events on that, but you would have a single insight. So that's kind of how we reduce that alert fatigue. And then you would then roll that up into certain levels of criticality in the platform. We have some workflow in the platform that the analysts can use around criticality and managing these different insights.
Thanks, Richard. Michelle, I hope that answers your question. Yeah, I think that's all the time we have for today. Again, if there's anyone that would like to see a demo or continue the conversation, please reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to set up some time. Yeah, we look forward to hearing from you. Richard, thank you very much for taking us through the value proposition for Abstract. From Trinexia, thank you everybody for joining. We look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Excellent. Thanks for all your time, everyone. Thanks, Calvin. Thanks, Jay, for setting this up. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.